I think there's supposed to be this strange circular sort of logic to our lectionary today that brings up this text from the Gospel of John. The reading we just heard comes from the 14th chapter of John, in what's often called the Farewell Discourse of Jesus. We've backtracked a bit in a narrative sense from some of the post-resurrection accounts we heard in the first weeks of Easter. This story takes place on Maundy Thursday, just after Jesus washes his disciples' feet and gives them the new commandment that they love one another as he has loved them. We then find this scene. It's kind of weird in the middle of Easter to be back in the midst of Holy Week, but I think it was the intention of those who curated the lectionary that we have a chance to revisit that fateful night of betrayal and to be able to see this scene with new eyes and hear Christ's promises with new ears. I mean, what is Maundy Thursday and the eventual betrayal in the garden when you hear it in the full knowledge of Easter morning? We're meant to hear this farewell that gives way to a deep night of fear as Easter people. We're meant to hear this story with our eye on the ending, with hope, with the hope of resurrection burning within us. But this year is different, isn't it? You know, to be honest, I found myself really annoyed with this lesson this week. Jesus begins by saying, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me." And to be completely honest, I don't connect with that at all this week. Really, Jesus? Do not let your hearts be troubled? That's all you've got in the face of all of this? You know, I resonate so much more with Thomas's question that follows. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Thomas' question admits that he's scared. I mean, Jesus, you keep talking about your betrayal, and then Jerusalem is occupied by a whole lot of Romans right now, and you've been drawing a lot of attention to yourself, especially with that whole stunt you pulled in the temple with the money changers and the tables. And then Judas left the dinner party when you were talking about betrayers, and he hasn't come back yet. And you've been saying a lot of stuff lately about taking up my cross, kind of like those criminals that we passed on the road on the way in, and I didn't really think that following you was going to be like this. And Jesus, I'm scared. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Jesus, my heart is troubled. Jesus, I'm scared. Frankly, Lord, it doesn't feel like there's an Easter lens on this Maundy Thursday story at all. Just like Thomas on that night, I'm scared. I'm scared to go to the store. I'm scared to touch a gas pump. I'm scared to go near someone for fear that I could be an asymptomatic carrier or that they could. I'm scared for friends at a distance. I'm scared for those I may never see again. I'm scared. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? What even is the way forward from all of this? It just feels like things will never get back to normal. And folks are saying that even normal won't be normal. There's all this talk of reopening, but there's still new cases of COVID-19. It's not safe yet. Should things resume, or am I just bored and restless? And what does a path back look like? How can we know the way? Jesus says he's leading. Jesus says he's with us. But when I'm so caught up in my own fear and self-preservation, it's really hard to see him. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? I think we really are meant to read this story with our mind on Easter. When our minds are caught up in the same fear as the disciples that night, just like them, it's really easy to miss the point. It's easy to forget that this passage, as theologians have titled it for a long time, is the Farewell Discourse. Jesus is teaching his followers in the hours before his own death how to say goodbye. When resurrection is our way of life, there are going to be many opportunities to face our fears and say goodbye. As Christians, that's something we need to practice. There is always going to be death before resurrection. God is making all things new, but loss of something is the inevitable beginning to new life. It can be a good thing or a bad thing. Whether it's our sense of false security, or our best laid plans, or systems in which we thought we could trust, or whether it's someone we love dearly. We need to learn, in faith, how to say goodbye. That's exactly what Jesus teaches his followers this night. And when Jesus is teaching us about how to say goodbye, he's really teaching us about grace. Grace is a promise from a God who loves us dearly. Grace is a promise from a God who has prepared a way of salvation for us, who has prepared a place for us to abide, to dwell in God's peace. Grace is the promise that lies all along the way of one who is the way, the truth, and the life. Grace is the promise of one who reveals God, our Creator, by his very presence. Grace is a promise from one who has done great works so that our salvation may not be bound to works so that we might try to save ourselves. This promise of love eternal is meant to dismantle our fears and worries that are fruits of the systems we've built for ourselves that lie to us and say that we're lacking, that we aren't doing enough, that we aren't worthy, that our neighbor is lesser than us, that we are wholly unloved. This promise it's never meant to be a litmus test or a checklist at the high gates of an impenetrable heaven, but the wide open promise that salvation can be known in the midst of the earth and that our fears and sins are all that is holding us back from seeing God's kingdom here and now in amazing ways. It's the promise that was first shared on Easter morning that God was, is, and always will be rolling away the stones that shut our tombs tight so that we might see a new way, walk in a new hope, sing a new song, and trust that God's love will always have the last word. This promise is that even when we are scared and we don't know the way walks alongside us in love. The way that Jesus says goodbye to his followers is not rooted in expectations and disappointments and rebukes and rules and laws and duties and obligations. It's rooted in promise. It's rooted in grace. Jesus, we're scared. We do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Even as we ask these questions, confess these fears, and struggle to find a way forward in these troubled times, the way himself is with us, speaking a promise rooted in grace that he is risen. He is here. The way is with us, teaching us how to say goodbye to what was, that we might walk in new life now. When all we can see is the gloom of Maundy Thursday, the way is speaking through the night that we may know grace in the dawn. We're called to say goodbye. We're called to say goodbye to a system of works righteousness that hangs over us like shackles and orients our lives toward fear and not towards hope. We live under a lie that we can save ourselves from whatever mess we're in, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and be our own redeemer. That's a lie. We need each other. This season of physical distancing has revealed again and again how much we need one another and how woefully helpless we are alone and how strong we are in unity. As disciples, we are called to obey, to love, to serve, and to do good works. But at the same time that we are called to say goodbye to any notion that those things save us. Those things reveal the kingdom of God here on earth, a beloved community united in promise and love. And we are being sent to reveal that way of hope in unity to our world. We are called to say goodbye to our old selves, to be changed by this experience of God. As Jesus says, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. This is meant to make us a changed people who are willing to change, to meet the deep needs of this world. People like Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed in February in Georgia for the crime of jogging while black in America. People like Ahmaud need us to change. Systems of racism and white supremacy that took this young man's life, denied him justice for 74 days until there was enough public outcry. These things exist in this nation. And our faith in the God whose love is poured out for all people demands that we examine ourselves, our complicity, and then say goodbye to what we find. Our siblings of color in this nation need folks who claim to be rooted in grace to say goodbye and walk in a new resurrection way that reveals God's deep love for all people and God's deep delight in the beauty of our diversity. There are plenty of sinful systems in our world that deal death, fear, and pain daily. And it is our calling as followers of Christ to leave those things in the tomb and build a new way of abundant life for all people. When we experience resurrection, there is no going back to the ways of death from before. We're called to say goodbye to our old assumptions and plans. I'm sure it seems like we've done far too much of that lately, but have we really let it go? Saying goodbye means discerning God's will for our new future and how we are to join in the mission of God here on earth, in this community, reconciling all people to the love of their Creator. This will look different than the way of fear we knew before. And yes, we are called to say goodbye to the faithful among us. We do this with trust as well. This story that we heard today is often used as a funeral text, not as a wish crossing our fingers that the person we were remembering that day got into heaven. But we share it because it's a story rooted in the promise of God's abundant grace. Trusting in grace, trusting in the salvation accomplished by Jesus Christ our Lord, we can say goodbye to one another in faith as we continue our pilgrimage on earth. We celebrate the lives of the saints. We trust that God keeps God's promises. And we look forward to the day when we are united again in the fullness of God's mercy. God's promises, as we've shared many times throughout this season, do not make the pain and dangers we're experiencing magically go away. But these grace-filled promises speak in such a way that our pain and fear will never get the last word, but are held in the love of God and in the love of this community. In the midst of what we're feeling, I pray that we allow Jesus to speak these promises into our lives in ways that allow us to know and trust in the way to truth and life that brings hope in the midst of our pain. Jesus, we're scared. We do not know where you are going. We do not know the way forward. And so we say goodbye to fear, to sin, to our best laid plans, to our expectations, to our death-dealing systems, and to one another. We say goodbye together in a sure and abiding confidence in the promises of Christ, who is the way, the truth, the life. This promise is what will guide us through the gloom of Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and let us stride boldly into a new Easter dawn. Amen.